Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen Steve.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Good afternoon, Christeen. How are you today?
I am good. It's midweek. We've got some sunshine weather out, which is really nice. No snow, no rain. So I can't complain.
Yeah, it's beautiful here in Connecticut. Just had a little bit of rain this week after one of the rainiest years to date so far. Super excited that my team is getting a lot of work done. Customers are happy, and we are really plugging along. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a 30-minute podcast approximately, and we're just going to have a conversation. And today's conversation is going to be about focus.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good topic because I feel like not only am I coaching my team around this, it's also been happening like in our group coaching. So our peer groups, our emerging leader groups, and even one-on-one with our business owners as well. So I thought, maybe we should mix things up and kind of talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing and hearing about and share it with our audience because I'm sure they're experiencing this as well.
So Christeen, like when you hear focus in a small business, what comes to mind first?
Well, so focus is one of my strengths. So I think it's my number 6. So I think I have a completely different perspective when it comes to focus. So what focus means to me, I think is deep and wide versus somebody else. It's just, very surface. So when I think of focus, I think of, and of course my other strengths come into play, or like strategic and achiever. So I get tasky and, I'm thinking about like what's coming. So I think of what is the most important thing that we need to accomplish. And then what are we giving our time to? And so that's when I think of focus, that's what I think of is, are we focused and are we being intentional, or are we distracted and are we doing other things? So there might be good intentions, right? But like what's behind that?
And I think you made a good point, right? So focus can mean different things to different people depending on your strengths. And when Christeen says strengths, she's referring to her Gallup-Clifton strengths. And it's really good to know those so you understand yourself a little bit better. And being number 6 for you, Christeen, it's one of those, it's out of your top 5. And our top 5 are like, it's the very fabric of who we are, how we feel and think. And then once we get out of 5, we have a little bit more influence on the gas and brakes. So that's one of the first strength that you have that you can really bring into your top 5 when you need it. So give me an example of some, like you shared some of the owners and some of the emerging leaders. Give me an example of what challenges that they're going through with focus.
Yeah, so some of it is they're finding that their team isn't focusing on what needs to get done right now, right? So it's like instead of this really identifying like, hey, these are the top 3 most important high priority things, they're off kind of doing other things in the company, that, and some of them are interesting enough could be old hat, right? So it's like, what did you used to do that you're not really doing anymore? And we hired somebody to do it, but you're kind of like over in their lane doing those things, so it could be, they might be like, oh, well, I was trying to, create capacity for that team member because they were overwhelmed. And so I knew how to do that part of their task. So, I went over there to do that. So that's kind of one of the things is, they get distracted and they're not doing what they're really supposed to be doing, but what they are doing has good intentions.
Yes. And I've heard, a few owners and even managers, the emerging leaders, say, well, I was supposed to be doing this, but then I saw they needed help. So I helped them. I jumped in and helped them bust it out and get it done. But then they didn't make their 4 calls and go on their 2 appointments in order tomorrow's plants and check on the block shipment for the delivery. And so it creates a whole slew of, other challenges. So what do you think drives that, like that need to jump in and help?
Yeah, so I think what's driving the managers, to kind of go off course or focus is I think that it really has to do with like the path of least resistance, right? So when things get tough, we kind of go to, well, what's the easiest thing I can do now, right? And then we get stuck in the weeds. We don't focus on like the big picture, and we just kind of take like this detour. So, and I've seen this with my team, right? And some of my top team who I know, like they know this strategy, they know this is a problem, like they support business owners around this, but they can get stuck in the weeds too, just like we do. And I have found myself too, to where I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this. And then I'm off doing something else. And I have to ask myself, why am I doing this? I'm like, what am I avoiding? Where are my challenges? Why am I saying yes to this? And if I am saying yes to this, like, what am I saying no to?
Right. That you've shared that before. That's really powerful. If I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? Right. And we run off and kind of do something that we used to do. Do we want to look like a hero by helping the team out? But then later on, we pay the price because now we're not ready for tomorrow, or we haven't finished our own task. Yeah, I'm always curious. I see myself doing it. And sometimes I actually schedule that. I'm like, okay, for 45 minutes, I'm going to do this. And for 15 minutes, I go get to do something that's distracting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's talking to the front office, going out in the garage, looking for things that we need to have fixed or repaired, or walking around my gardens or shops and making lists of things that need to be done. But then realizing that's what I did, and then going back, 15 minutes later, and I'm back at what I'm supposed to do. So what do you think that cost is? I mean, it's almost, I don't know if you can quantify it, but it's expensive to lose focus.
Yeah. So, some of the things that I know just from my experiences, if I'm doing something else, right, instead of what I'm supposed to be doing, one, I'm not going to hit my deadlines, and I'm not going to achieve my goal. So if I'm supposed to, let's say, be reviewing a client's books and creating some strategies for them, and instead I'm overwriting a blog article, then I know that by the time I'm supposed to meet with that client, I'm not going to have those strategies ready for them. And then I go into this panic mode and I'm stressed out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get this done like right away. And I know if that happens, then the quality of the strategy and review that I am, investing in isn't as great as an investment for that client. So the outcome is going to be different, right? So we could lose value. We could lose, time, like, what gap are we closing or what problem are we solving? So that's some of the things, that we can lose with that. And then the other thing, I think there's this other cost that we aren't always aware of, but it's the kind of the cost of like, how are we showing up for that other person, right? So we don't feel the best about ourselves of how we're showing up. And then also, and I don't think a lot of leaders think about this, because entrepreneurs, it's like we're so scrappy and we're kind of all over the place, and we do lack structure and discipline. But whose toes are we stepping on? When we're going outside of our lane and we're not really doing our job, there's two things that I think happens. One of them is, I don't trust you for doing, for you to do your job. I'm going to come do your job for you instead. So that could be unintentionally communicated. And then two is, I'm not doing what I promised I would do, and therefore I'm not delivering on my promises.
Right. Stepping on toes. It could be, that could really destroy culture in the company. And, it's really almost like a leadership issue, right? If you're doing that and people feel you don't trust them, that means, that you're not really leading them because you're not trusting them. And also, thinking like, your team's looking at you, hey, you're the leader, or you're the boss, or you're, the foreman. Why are you doing this? Shouldn't you be doing that? And it kind of can undermine confidence in our own team, because we're not doing the things that they're expecting us to do. Our clients are expecting us to do, and actually we know we should be doing. But
Right.
it's easy to run around and start putting out those fires. There's the Eisenhower quadrant that we use a lot at work here. And let's see if I can get this right. It's 4 quadrants. Basically, you just draw 4 boxes, and it's urgent and not important, urgent and important, not urgent but important, and not urgent and not important. And we know that we're going to end up, there's just no way to stay in important and urgent all the time. There's no way to stay in all these, but we want to make sure that we're staying in important, not urgent is the most important one to be in. If we're in urgent but not important all the time, that is where you see businesses really struggle. And using this quadrant has really helped me and my team to kind of stay focused.
Yeah. And I like that, like giving them a tool, because one thing that I've experienced is, though I may have the strengths and, the knowledge of how to prioritize, that's something I'm pretty good at, as long as I'm, not distracted by something else, or I'm not trying to avoid something, right? My team doesn't always have that skill. And I assume, and I have in the past assumed, like, oh, they should know better. They're all adults, right? That they know how to prioritize and they know how to be responsible. But not all of my team has those strengths that come out the gate. They have other strengths, like we've talked about, executing hijack, right? Like my team they're high executors, and they could just get into like checking off that task list versus going, hey, what's most important on this task list to get done right now? And I look at that and go, how could I support them? And I try to be intentional about having conversations. So this is where I think one-on-ones and check-ins really come in handy, because it's allowing this short space, just this little bit of space to connect with the team and make sure they're on track, and, not being too busy, as a leader, or even too lazy to say, I don't have time. But then we make assumptions that they are on track and they are doing what they're supposed to do. And then when they don't, we're highly disappointed and, frustrated. We feel, maybe derailed, or now we have to go fix a problem. But if we're being intentional to make sure that they're on track and we're on the same page, then, this distraction isn't going to happen, right? And typically there's good intentions involved with it, but they're not focused on what I want them to be focused on. And typically it's either I'm creating the confusion, or they're struggling with deciding what to focus on. And we've talked about decision fatigue before. As business owners, our team gets it as well, to where we're just exhausted and we're like, I just don't know what to choose, so I'm just going to pick the next thing.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yes. And one of the things that's very interesting, and I had a conversation, a coaching client this week, was people talking, people on our team, they have an issue or a challenge, and they come to one of the leaders, and they start sharing their challenges, and then the leader shares solutions. And it gets very frustrating for both the team member and the leader, because that team member is not actually looking for solutions. They're just wanting to be heard and acknowledged. So it gets frustrating. Oh, I'm having this challenge. We'll do this, this, and that. And then they don't do it because they just really honestly want to be seen and heard and acknowledged and not listened to. So it's actually quicker just to listen to them and not try to be the answer person and solve their issues. They know how to solve the issues. I'm talking about experienced long-term team members who have seasoned people who know what's happening. But it really reminds me of that. It's not about the nail video where the woman has the nail stuck in her head and the guy's telling her to take it out, and she's like, "You're not listening to me." So it's really a good way to listening focused and really seeing what our team members are really saying, and not that we need to fix everything.
Yeah. And I think when in doubt, right, because this could be a just something new that business owners are navigating, where they're like, yeah, I need to communicate with my team, or I need to see, what they're doing and if they're focusing on the right thing. So maybe, you don't know how they want to be supported, right? So the easy thing is to ask. And this is something that, over time, like with my husband, I discovered this to where I was like, you don't need to fix everything. Like, I'm just sharing this with you. And, he was like, well, what do you want me to do? And part of me was like, oh, you should just know. And then I was like, no, he doesn't know, I need to tell him. So that's being kind, right? Is like informing them so they can support me successfully. So if you don't know, just ask, like, how can I support you? And do you want me to just listen to you? Do you want me to, give some advice and strategies? Do you want me to solve the problem? Like, what do you want me to do? So it's kind of like doing it all, doing nothing, and just listening, or somewhere in the middle. And they will tell you how they want to be supported in this situation. And it may change from time to time. Like, some people just be like, I don't know, like, what should I do? I just need somebody to make a decision, a strategic decision for me. And other people will be like, no, I just want you to hear me. Like, I'm just venting right now.
Yeah, that's a good advice, because like we can spend a lot of time helping people who don't need it, or we jump in and they, like you said earlier, they don't feel trusted, and they don't feel that you have confidence in them. So listening is a powerful, question asking is a powerful tool. It's very interesting. We go through school, everyone goes through school, and you're really rewarded for your answers, right? And I don't know, unless it's new, is there a class on question asking, right? Do we ever get good grades for asking good questions, or it's all about the answers? So we've been trained our whole life to be the answer person, and there's a cost with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like the, curious approach, because as children, I remember, I was one of those kids. I talked a lot. I asked questions. And now I have a child that's like I was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I must have drove my parents absolutely, batty. And I have to stop myself from telling him, no more questions, right? Stop asking questions or stop talking. And he loves to talk. He loves to have the answers. He loves to have the questions. And we were told growing up, like, stop talking. Children should be seen and not heard. If we asked too many questions, we were shut down. So I don't think that we were encouraged, to be curious and ask questions. Like, it's not, we were kind of told like that's bad and it's not the right path. So we're having to rewire ourselves as entrepreneurs and leaders, to ask questions and be curious. And that's hard. Change is really hard.
It is, and one of the things, I visited over 45 different businesses, mostly landscape companies. And one of the things that I've seen is like intentional chaos or intentional misfocus, right? Where everybody is doing everything and nobody owns anything. There's no clear lanes. One day you're on the mowing crew, the next day you're on the irrigation crew, the next day you're on the paver crew, the next day you're pushing fertilizer, or everybody does everything type of where they're the same lawn tech is making call aheads, doing sales calls, fixing their truck, doing their own route scheduling, doing the lawn apps. And those are typically the least profitable in like most dysfunctional businesses. And the focus is just, it's ridiculous. The lack of focus. And it starts with the owner and he just pushes that through the rest of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I've seen that as well. I actually started off in business consulting and fell into accounting. So I was always looking at the operational side of the business. So it's been fascinating to me to pull, what I started with into the profitability side and the numbers, which is why I think it came so natural because I was like, oh, both of these are exciting. Like, how do they impact each other? And I have seen that when you don't have that structure in your company, then, it isn't efficient, right? You don't have systems and processes. Nobody knows whose job is what. And it can be a hidden bleed in a company. And it's not that they're bad employees, right? They're just not being given the structure that they need to be the best that they can be. And that's the challenge. It's not like you don't need to fire everybody, right? You guys just all need to get on the same page and identify whose lane is what. So you're not going back and undermining someone else's job or someone else's role. And there's very simple ways that you can start doing this. And one of them is, developing a mission, vision, purpose, which is the first couple steps in the pumpkin plan, right? Which this is the month of pumpkin planning. So you're going to be hearing a lot about that. But with the pumpkin plan process, we want to know what the mission is of the company, what the vision is, what the immutable laws are, right? The company's core values. And then you go through goal planning and identifying what goals you have for each quarter and who's going to champion those goals. So just a simple process like that can really start bringing the team together and bringing an understanding of whose job is what, who's supposed to be championing what, and what the overall goal is, like what everybody is moving towards. So it really kind of starts establishing that foundation of focus in a company. So it's not something drastic that somebody has to do where they're like, oh yeah, this sounds like my company. Everybody's all over the place. They can simply come together, create that mission, vision, and purpose, and some of those goals. And it's going to instantly start changing the focus of the company and the efficiency in the company.
Yeah, and I think it helps the owner. The team members are just kind of doing what the owner wants, and the mission, vision, purpose, immutable law. It helps focus the owner, so they're having the right people do the right jobs at the right time. And so, what I learned from those visits and watching some of those other companies was like to have my lawn tech spend most of their time teching. Right? They don't do any call aheads. They don't do any sales calls. They don't make their own signs. They don't schedule their own. And they are the most highly productive techs in the country, I think, in the top 3% of the country, and that's in square feet and dollars per day. So it really was beneficial for me to see a low profitable company where everybody does everything. The tech's responsible for that whole vertical process, and how it really hinders focus and profitability. So lining up your daily functions to your mission, vision, purpose, and immutable laws is super powerful.
Yeah. And that's a much deeper dive for sure. Getting the foundation done first is going to really help you. Like, where are we wasting time, or who's doing someone else's job, or who's doing the same thing, right? So you might have one guy going out and like cleaning the shop, and then someone else goes out afterwards and cleans the shop again. and they don't know that two people are like cleaning the shop.
Right.
So something just as silly as that, and going, it's like, I didn't know you clean the shop. He's like, I do it every day. So just kind of making the team aware of like, this is our focus. Okay, now what are you all doing? And who's going to be doing these things? And there's some things too where we've brought people through these, some of this coaching, and they realized that there's things that are being done in the company that were done, for the last 5 or 10 years, and they don't need to do anymore because it doesn't serve the bigger purpose and goal of the company, and it's just a waste of time. But there's this fear of like letting it go and allowing change to happen.
So, I mean, that, right, letting that change happen, and that really starts with a growth mindset.
Yeah, which is a whole
And
nother.
that starts with curiosity, right, and a learner mindset. And so, how can you give me an example or share like a story of where you saw someone, maybe they didn't have the growth mindset when you first started working with them, and then that growth mindset, they realized it, they developed it, now they're living it?
Oh, there's so many, I think, long-term journeys that I could share. I think that one of them was one where we started working with somebody on their accounting, and they'd never hired, let's say, a professional accountant before, like the real deal, strategic accountant and advisor. So this was a really big change for them. And they had an internal bookkeeper, for a long time. And this is very typical. Like this, it's just not one person that I could tie this story to. There's several people that we've gone through this with. And though their internal bookkeeper had really good intentions, they didn't know what they were doing. And when we tried to support them in doing it correctly, it was really taken as, a criticism, right? So it's like trying to give that good, positive feedback to them and say, okay, I know this is how we used to do it, but this is how we're going to do it, and training them and supporting them to succeed in that. And interacting with us, they were like, oh, yeah, thanks. But then they would go to the owner and say, hey, I don't like this company. They do this and they do that. So creating this whole another narrative. And what was really going on was their insecurities on being coached with this narrative of I'm not good enough, and we're not going to succeed with this company because they're making all these changes. And what really happened was, and in some cases the person has come around, and in other cases the owner realized this person got me here, they're not the person to get me there, and that's okay. They weren't willing to make the necessary changes to bring the company to the next level. And they were making it very personal versus, hey, this is about growth. And this is about, expanding our skill sets and talents and working together as a team.
Yes. The changes are, difficult when you make changes in a company. And I remember working with one of our clients, and they were spending like 2 weeks a year trying to figure out their inventory. And I like, you have to work with Christine. And he was frustrated with himself because he couldn't figure it out. And then he started working with you and your team at Core. And now he's been a client for quite a while. He has people in the company that are doing the inventory. His company has grown. There's been some people in that company that had to leave because they weren't willing to grow and with those changes and make those improvements. But, he went from 100% or 120% in the day-to-day of the operation to maybe 60% in the day-to-day of the operation, and the company's grown by 100%. And he has people that are in there implementing the correct strategies and tactics, and it wasn't easy, this growth, but giving up on and realizing he doesn't need to focus on counting urea fertilizer bags. He needs to focus on building a company. He
Yes.
needs to focus on hiring professionals who really know what they do, so he can go do what he really knows how to do. And he's very inspirational and very polarizing personality with his customers and his brand. And that's where he needed to spend his time, not trying to figure out how to do accounting. So once his focus aligned, his company doubled in size, and it's continuing to grow and thrive and give him and his family. It's really about this, right? Giving him and his family and his team the lifestyle that they're working so hard for.
Yeah. And that perfectly ties to the focus starts with the owner, right? The map of where are you guys going, what turns are you going to make, where's your, your journey ending. It really begins with the owner. And the owner then needs to make sure that the team understands it. And it's not one of those things you have to go out alone, because this is something I got frustrated with, where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pushing this business, up the hill by myself, and my team, they're just like running around me. And that was a huge struggle. And then when I got, the right people on my team, they were also, forwarding the message. So I'm not the only one who's driving the bus anymore. It's my team is also doing that. So it's not one of those things like you can't go at it alone. You need the people to support you. And they also have to have the language, that you want to create in the company, right? Like the positive mindset, what are our goals? Are we, should we be focusing on this right now? What is my job and my responsibility? Am I delivering that? And the owner needs to know what those things are before the team can know what they are and understand them.
Yep, it all starts at the top and it gets pushed down in all businesses. And a lot of times it starts with our personalities and our own strengths and talents, and realizing that we need to bring people on our team to balance us out. So it is a balancing act, right? And we're kind of getting toward the end of today's podcast. And by acknowledging that there's challenges in small business, we need to maintain good intentions amidst our overwhelm through strategic planning, mindset shifts, supportive leadership. And it's possible to navigate these challenges effectively, which is easier said than done. It's a struggle every day. And that's why, many of our clients have found the coaching and getting professional accounting with advisory in their businesses have, helped them to increase their profits, grow their teams, double the size of their company, reduce how many hours they're working in the company at the same time. It's a journey I went through, and it's a journey that we're helping other business owners go through right now.
Yeah. And I'll add too, I was just having a conversation with somebody that we've been working with, to where, they've been overwhelmed. They've been really busy. It's, it's like the 100 days of hell right now. Right. So it's like, it started, they're kind of, going through it. And, and I had to acknowledge, like, I know you're overwhelmed. This is going to happen. Right. We are trying to change the habits as a business owner from reacting to our business, which I have done because I'm really great at juggling fire. So I'm like, oh, I've got this, right? And I could just react. My team wasn't great at juggling fire. So, we weren't making as much progress until I changed that reactive, management to responsive. And it's a really big thing to change, and change is hard. So I think just acknowledging I am overwhelmed and I am trying to change how we manage the day-to-day tasks, that's going to take time, is really the first step. And then identifying, like, really easy, like, what 3 things can I change? I'm going to get my goals identified, at least for this quarter. I'm going to start checking in with my team members and finding out what are they focusing on, and get us on the same page.
Yeah, right. Goals, checking with your team, that communication in our own minds and also with our team. It's a great first step to getting focused. Well, thank you all for listening to the show. And I want to encourage you to, make sure you subscribe so you'll get the alerts when we have a new podcast. And also, share this with your friends. If this podcast has helped you and there's someone in your life, maybe it's a friend, family member, or just someone that that you think would benefit, please share this podcast with them. And don't forget, it's Pumpkin Plan month. And we're going to be talking about that all month.
And we also ask if you want to talk about something or you want us to talk about something, we are very open to suggestions. So I would like to invite you to share a challenge or a topic that you would like us to cover. And you can do that by going to growgpa.com/podcast ask. And we will share that link in our show notes. And I invite you to give us a topic for us to discuss.
Super. We'll look forward to you joining us on the next podcast. Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.